So welcome to this second half in the video looking at the repressed homosexual desire of Jekyll and Utterson. So we pick up the extract from the chapter Search for Mr. Hyde, which is chapter 2. At this point here, I'll put a link at the end of the video in case you haven't seen the first one that looks at the prior bit of the extract. So watch out for this at the end of the video. Here we go. The figure in these two phases haunted the lawyer all night, and if at any time he dozed over, it was but to see it glide more stealthily through sleeping houses, or move the more swiftly, and still the more swiftly, even to dizziness, through wider labyrinths of the lamp-lighted city, and at every street corner crush a child and leave her screaming. I hope you enjoy the melodrama of his writing. I don't actually focus on the melodrama here, but you could. Here comes the analysis. To allude to this more strongly, by this that means the homosexual desire that Utterson has towards Jekyll, and that Jekyll has towards Hyde, in Utterson's mind, obviously not in real life because they're the same person. Utterson distorts the memory of Hyde as a juggernaut, who he now imagines moving at ever-increasing speed, in a parody of sexual climax, to glide and then move the more swiftly, and still the more swiftly, even to dizziness. Because if you remember chapter 1, that's not how Hyde moved at all. He was just walking reasonably quickly, but purposefully, and the only one moving at speed was the girl who ran into him. And obviously she bumped off him, fell over, and he just walked across her. So this isn't him remembering Enfield's story. This is him retelling the story with sexually charged language, through which Stevenson is saying, look, there's a lot going on under the surface here, and the characters aren't aware of it because they are suppressing their own homosexual desires, because in Victorian England it was illegal, and so people repressed it. More than that, it was seen in terms of the church as unnatural. So there was nothing dizzy in Hyde's trampling of the girl. This effect is being produced on Utterson as a result of his own desires. Stevenson reveals them only in dreams because they are forbidden. A man who is homosexual is literally lost to society, and Stevenson illustrates this with the metaphor of the city being made up of wider labyrinths. And back to the extract. And still the figure had no face by which he might know it. Even in his dreams it had no face, or one that baffled him, and melted before his eyes. And the analysis. Stevenson next employs repetition to suggest that this figure, standing beside Jekyll's bed, is not just Hyde, or even just Utterson, but a personification of homosexual desire. Consequently, the figure had no face. It had no face, or one that baffled him and melted before his eyes. One reason that Utterson can't hold on to the face is that he dare not admit that it is his own. Another reason, perhaps, is jealousy or sexual curiosity. He wonders what face has drawn Jekyll so successfully that Hyde can now blackmail him. So, in Utterson's mind, after the blackmail conversation with Enfield in chapter 1, he is convinced that Hyde is blackmailing Jekyll because they've had a homosexual relationship. Hyde threatens Jekyll that he's going to reveal this and therefore can extort money out of him. Of course, that's not what's happening at all. However, Utterson doesn't just want to meet Hyde, he wants to see his face. What is it that's so attractive about Hyde? And on the one hand, that's incredibly ironic, isn't it? Because Hyde is described as ugly by everybody, even though they can't describe his features. But if you look at it from Jekyll's point of view, Hyde is deeply attractive because Hyde can act on all those repressed desires. You can see what's going on here. The attraction is being able to give in to those desires, and that's what Utterson wants to do. That's why he's potentially attracted to this figure, and desperately wants to see his face. Back to the extract. And thus it was that there sprang up and grew apace in the lawyer's mind a singularly strong, almost an inordinate curiosity to behold the features of the real Mr. Hyde. the analysis. The final reference to his face is cleverly ironic. Utterson feels curiosity to behold the features of the real Mr. Hyde. The emphasis of real tells the reader that Hyde is not who he seems. This again is a theme of the novella because the real face of Hyde is, of course, Dr. Jekyll. Hyde is not separate, that should say from Jekyll. He is only the evil part of his nature made flesh. But another irony is that perhaps Hyde's evil is just a social construct. So it's just society that agrees that Hyde's evil. He isn't actually evil at this stage. He may only be disgusting to a Victorian audience because he is homosexual. And if you've watched my videos on chapter 1, you'll know that Enfield is far, far worse than Hyde, and Hyde has done almost nothing wrong at this stage. It's quite interesting the way Stevenson plays with this idea. So this is about as far as you need to go. My first video, and this one will take you to around 300 words of the extract and to an essay of around 600 to 700 words. But I'm going deeper for you because it will be useful for your revision, and some of you, like several of my students, will be able to write much more than this and nail the grade 8 and grade 9 for sure. Back to the extract. If he could but once set eyes on him, he thought the mystery would lighten and perhaps roll altogether away, as was the habit of mysterious things when well explained. He might see a reason for his friend's strange preference or bondage. Call it what you please. So Stevenson makes this explicit, what I was saying about homosexual desire, as explicit as he dare when Utterson wonders about Jekyll's reason for his strange preference or bondage. Call it what you please. Strange is a deliberate echo of the title, which you remember is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, suggesting that Jekyll's duality of man, oh look, how stupid of me, that is a quotation. I always tell my students, every time you use a phrase that's anywhere in the novel, use quotation marks, is not just the science which allows him to create a new being, but the revelation that this duality is potentially present in all men. So that's what Jekyll's experiment shows. If we took the potion, we all have this duality inside us, and that other being would come out of our own inner nature. Yeah, one part of our nature would come out. Bondage is not used here as a modern sexual reference. Didn't mean the same thing. However, it still implied enslavement to desire. So to be in bondage was to be a slave, and therefore once more suggests Jekyll's sexual desire for Hyde. And now the final bit of the extract. And even for the startling clause of the will, at least it would be a face worth seeing, the face of a man who was without bowels of mercy, a face which had but to show itself to raise up in the mind of the unimpressionable Enfield a spirit of enduring hatred. Let's analyse it. Their society dictates that homosexual desire is evil, and for this reason Utterson reminds himself that Hyde's face encouraged Enfield to have a spirit of enduring hatred. We remember that in chapter 1, Enfield had to hold back a desire to murder Hyde. Here, Stevenson suggests that the social evil is not homosexual desire, but the hypocritical need to suppress it. So, through Enfield's reaction and Utterson's reaction, he's trying to dramatise how Victorian society is repressing people, but also capable of much worse crimes than Hyde is capable of at the minute. And it's only later in the novel, when he's been imprisoned for about a year by Jekyll and not let out, that he then becomes murderous and actually does become more evil. So, made it in under 10 minutes. Well done for sticking with it. Don't forget to subscribe.